We're modernizing everything, the new chief technology officer announced during the all-hands meeting. No more legacy garbage holding us back. He was looking directly at me when he said it. My name is Ryan Martinez. I'm 38 years old, and for the past 7 years, I've been the sole architect behind the inventory management system that keeps Phoenix Medical Supply running. The system he just called legacy garbage processes $50 million in medical equipment orders annually and has never had a single failure. But apparently it wasn't modern enough for our new CTO, who'd been on the job for exactly 3 weeks. But Marcus Chen, our new CTO fresh from a failed tech startup in Silicon Valley, had decided it was time for a digital transformation. The meeting continued with Marcus explaining his vision. We're implementing Salesforce Commerce Cloud, integrating with Microsoft Dynamics, and transitioning to a microservices architecture. Everything will be cloud-native, scalable, and built on industry best practices. I raised my hand. What's the timeline for this transition? Aggressive, but achievable. 6 weeks for full migration. The new system goes live January 1st. 6 weeks. To replace 7 years of custom development that handled thousands of edge cases specific to medical equipment distribution. I almost laughed. After the meeting, I approached Marcus privately. I'd like to discuss the technical requirements for the migration. There are some unique compliance issues in medical equipment distribution that Ryan. He interrupted. I appreciate your institutional knowledge, but that's exactly the kind of thinking we need to move away from. These modern platforms handle compliance automatically. We don't need custom workarounds anymore. But the FDA requires specific audit trails for certain device categories, and the insurance pre-authorization workflows are incredibly complex. The new platform handles all of that out of the box. Trust me, I've implemented this exact stack at 3 previous companies. I nodded politely. Could I see documentation on how these platforms handle the specific regulations we deal with? Marcus's expression hardened slightly. Ryan, I need you to embrace the change. The decision's been made. Your job is to help make the transition smooth. That night, I went home to my apartment in Tempe and did what any good software architect does when facing a potential disaster. I started documenting everything. I joined Phoenix Medical 7 years ago when the company had 8 employees and was run out of founder Sarah Chen's garage. Sarah had started the company after watching her diabetic mother struggle to get insulin supplies through traditional medical distributors. There has to be a better way, she'd said. What kind of support? Jessica spoke up. User training, documentation, maybe some basic reporting. The new platform handles most development needs through configuration rather than coding. I looked at both of them. What happens to the current system during the transition? We'll run them in parallel for a few weeks, Marcus said. But the goal is to completely sunset your application by February. And what about the compliance requirements? The FDA audit trails? The insurance integration? All handled by the new platform, Jessica said confidently. We've configured everything according to industry best practices. After the meeting, I walked back to my desk and opened my laptop. I pulled up the system monitoring dashboard that showed our current performance metrics. In the past month, we'd processed 47,000 orders worth $12.3 million. Average processing time 2.3 minutes. Error rate 0.003%. Customer satisfaction score 98.7%. But apparently that wasn't good enough for the modern world. I made a decision that afternoon. I wasn't going to fight the migration, but I wasn't going to pretend it would work either. Instead, I would document everything that was about to break. I spent the next 2 weeks creating what I called the Phoenix Manual, a comprehensive guide to every edge case, special requirement, and complex workflow that my system handled. It was 247 pages of detailed scenarios that would need to be addressed in any replacement system. I sent it to Marcus with a simple note. These are the requirements that the new system will need to handle to maintain our current service levels. His response came back the same day. Thanks for the documentation. The consultants will review it, but I'm confident the new platform addresses these needs. The migration began on December 1st. I watched from the sidelines as Meridian Digital's team worked to configure Salesforce Commerce Cloud for medical equipment distribution. The first warning sign came during user acceptance testing. Sarah Chen, who still handled some of our largest hospital accounts, called me after trying to process an order for emergency surgical equipment. "Ryan, I can't figure out how to flag this as a stat order. The hospital needs it within 4 hours for an emergency surgery." I looked at the new system interface, where my system had a prominent emergency order button that triggered expedited processing, insurance overrides, and direct courier dispatch. The new system had a generic priority level drop-down buried in a sub-menu. "Try setting the priority to high and adding a note," I suggested. She tried it. "It's asking for a reason code. I don't see emergency surgery in the drop-down." I pulled up the configuration settings. The reason codes were generic business categories like customer request and management decision. Nothing specific to medical emergencies. I called Marcus. "We need to add medical-specific reason codes to the priority system. Hospitals have different emergency classifications that affect how we process orders." "Ryan, we're trying to standardize our processes. Having too many specific categories makes the system unnecessarily complex. But a ventilator emergency is different from a routine equipment replacement. The processing requirements are completely different. The new system handles that through the priority levels. High, medium, low. It's much simpler. But it doesn't trigger the right workflows. Emergency orders need automatic insurance overrides, expedited shipping, direct hospital delivery. We'll train the users to handle those exceptions manually. Manually. The word that makes every software developer's heart sink. The second warning sign came a week later during inventory reconciliation. Our warehouse manager, Tom Rodriguez, had been with Phoenix Medical for 5 years and knew our inventory inside and out. "Ryan, the system is showing we have 47 defibrillators in stock, but I'm only seeing 23 on the shelves." I checked the new system's inventory tracking. It was counting incoming orders as available inventory before they'd been received and processed. My old system tracked inventory at multiple stages: ordered, received, inspected, and available for sale. The new system only had 2 states: ordered and available. The difference is the 24 units we ordered last week that haven't arrived yet, I explained to Tom. But the system is letting customers order them right now. "We just promised St. Joseph's Hospital a defibrillator for tomorrow morning, but we don't actually have it." I escalated the issue to Marcus, who forwarded it to Jessica Wright. Her response was a masterpiece of consultant speak. "This is a configuration opportunity. We can adjust the inventory availability parameters to align with operational reality." Translation: it was broken, but they could probably fix it if they understood how medical equipment inventory actually worked. The third warning sign was the big one. On December 15th, we received a routine FDA inspection notice. Every medical equipment distributor gets them, and they're serious business. FDA auditors want to see complete documentation for every piece of equipment we've handled, especially anything that's been recalled or flagged for safety issues. The FDA was particularly interested in a batch of insulin pumps we'd distributed 6 months earlier. One of the models had been recalled due to a software glitch that could cause incorrect dosing. In my old system, I could generate a complete audit trail in about 10 minutes. Every pump we'd received, which hospitals we'd sent them to, when they were delivered, who signed for them, and whether they'd been returned during the recall. I tried to run the same report in the new system. It couldn't do it. The new system could tell me that we'd ordered insulin pumps. It could tell me that we'd sold insulin pumps, but it couldn't connect the specific units we'd received to the specific units we'd sold. There was no lot tracking, no serial number management, no chain of custody documentation. I called an emergency meeting with Marcus and Jessica. "We have a problem," I began explaining the FDA inspection and the missing audit trail capabilities. Jessica looked at her laptop. "The system has full reporting capabilities." What specific data points do you need? I pulled up the FDA request. We need to show the complete chain of custody for 47 insulin pumps, lot number IP 2847, that we received on March 15th and distributed between March 20th and April 3rd. She started clicking through the system. I can see that we received insulin pumps on March 15th, and I can see that we sold insulin pumps during that time period. But can you match the specific units we received to the specific units we sold? More clicking. The system tracks all transactions. The data is there. But can you generate a report that shows which hospitals received pumps from that specific lot? A long pause. Let me check with our technical team. I already knew the answer. The new system treated all inventory as fungible. One insulin pump was the same as any other insulin pump. But in the medical equipment world, lot numbers and serial numbers aren't just useful, they're legally required for FDA compliance. Marcus looked uncomfortable. How critical is this functionality? Failure to provide complete audit trails to the FDA can result in the suspension of our distributor license. We'd be out of business. How long would it take to build this functionality into the new system? Jessica spoke up. Custom development would require a separate engagement. We'd need to scope the requirements and provide a separate estimate. How much are we talking about? For lot tracking and serial number management, probably 6 to 8 weeks of development. Maybe $150,000. Marcus went quiet. The new system was supposed to replace my custom solution, but now they'd need to spend an additional $150,000 to build back functionality that my system already had. I opened my laptop and pulled up my old system. This is the report the FDA wants, I said, clicking a few buttons. Complete chain of custody for lot IP 2847, generated in real time from our existing data. The report showed every detail: which specific pumps came from that lot, which ones went to which hospitals, who signed for them, and which ones had been returned during the recall. Everything the FDA needed to verify that we'd handled the recall properly. How long did that take you to generate? Marcus asked. About 30 seconds. Jessica was typing furiously on her laptop. We can definitely build similar functionality into the new platform. It's just a matter of configuration and maybe some custom reporting. By January 1st, I asked. Well, that timeline might be aggressive for this level of customization. Marcus rubbed his temples. What are our options? I looked at both of them. We could delay the migration until the FDA compliance issues are resolved. Or we could run both systems in parallel until the new system is ready. How long would that take? Jessica looked uncomfortable. To properly implement lot tracking, serial number management, FDA-compliant audit trails, and all the medical-specific workflows, probably 6 months. 6 months to build back the functionality that my system already had. Marcus had promised the board that the new system would be operational by January 1st, and now his consultants were telling him they needed another 6 months and $150,000 to make it actually work. There's a third option, I said quietly. Both of them looked at me. We could keep the current system. Marcus's expression hardened. That's not an option. We've already committed to the migration. I understand the commitment, I said. But we have an FDA inspection in 2 weeks. If we can't provide the audit trails they're requesting, they could shut us down. The room went quiet. Finally, Marcus spoke. Can you handle the FDA inspection using your current system? Of course, that's what it was designed for. And after the inspection, I shrugged. That's up to you. But the compliance requirements don't go away just because we switch platforms. The FDA inspection went perfectly. The auditors were impressed with our documentation, praised our tracking systems, and had no concerns about our compliance procedures. They particularly liked how quickly we could generate audit trails for any product they asked about. After they left, Marcus called me into his office. The inspection went well, he said. Yes, it did. I've been thinking about the timeline for the migration, and I think we should delay it. Take the time to properly implement all the functionality we need. I nodded. That seems reasonable. In the meantime, would you be willing to work with Jessica's team to document all the compliance requirements? Make sure nothing gets missed. I'd be happy to. Marcus leaned back in his chair. I have to ask you something. Did you know the new system wouldn't handle FDA compliance when we started this project? I looked at him for a long moment. I tried to explain the compliance requirements during our first conversation. You said the new platform handled them automatically. But you knew it wouldn't. I knew it was unlikely. FDA compliance isn't something that comes out of the box. It requires deep understanding of medical equipment regulations and very specific implementation. Why didn't you push harder? Because you told me the decision was made, and my job was to make the transition smooth. Marcus was quiet for a while. The board is asking questions about the project costs. We've spent $400,000 on consulting fees, and we're not any closer to having a working system. What are you going to tell them? I'm going to tell them we need to reassess our approach. 2 weeks later, Meridian Digital was dismissed from the project. Jessica Wright sent me a professional but cold email saying they were reallocating resources to other clients. Marcus called an all-hands meeting to announce the change in direction. After extensive evaluation, we've decided to continue developing our current systems rather than migrating to a new platform. This will allow us to maintain our competitive advantages while ensuring we meet all compliance requirements. He paused and looked directly at me. Ryan Martinez will be leading a new internal development team focused on enhancing our existing capabilities. After the meeting, several colleagues came up to congratulate me. Tom Rodriguez, our warehouse manager, was particularly blunt. Thank God. I was dreading having to learn that new system. Sarah Chen, the founder, pulled me aside privately. I should have consulted with you before approving the migration project. Your system has been the backbone of our growth for 7 years. I'm sorry we almost threw that away. It's understandable, I said. The promise of modern cloud-based solutions is appealing. But you knew it wouldn't work. I knew it would be much harder than Marcus expected. Medical equipment distribution isn't like selling t-shirts online. The regulations, the compliance requirements, the complexity of insurance approvals, it's all very specialized. So what now? Now I get to do what I love most. Solve complex problems with elegant software solutions. 6 months later, I was promoted to Chief Technology Officer, replacing Marcus Chen, who had resigned to pursue other opportunities. My first initiative was to modernize our existing system, not by replacing it but by enhancing it with new technologies that actually added value. We implemented a mobile app for our delivery drivers, added real-time inventory tracking with IoT sensors, and built an AI-powered system for predicting equipment demand at our hospital clients. All of it integrated seamlessly with the core system that had been handling our operations for 7 years. The results spoke for themselves. Customer satisfaction increased to 99.2%. Order processing time dropped to an average of 1.8 minutes. Most importantly, we passed our next FDA inspection with flying colors. A year later, I received a LinkedIn message from Jessica Wright. She was now working for a different consulting firm and had a client who was looking for help with medical equipment distribution software. I don't suppose Phoenix Medical would be interested in licensing your system to other distributors, she wrote. I've learned a lot about the complexity of this industry since our last project. I smiled as I wrote back, we'd be happy to discuss it. But I should mention up front, it's not an industry-standard solution. It's custom-built for the specific requirements of medical equipment distribution. That's exactly what we need, she replied. Sometimes the best way to prove the value of your work isn't to defend it. It's to let other people discover for themselves why it exists in the first place. Marcus Chen had called my system legacy garbage, but what he really meant was that it was old, stable, and didn't look like the shiny new platforms he was used to working with. He confused age with obsolescence, stability with stagnation, and custom solutions with poor engineering. The truth is, some problems require purpose-built solutions created by people who understand the domain deeply. Medical equipment distribution is one of those problems. You can't solve it with a generic e-commerce platform any more than you can perform surgery with kitchen utensils. My system wasn't legacy garbage. It was mature, proven, and perfectly suited to the problems it was designed to solve. The difference between those two things is the difference between software that works and software that looks impressive in presentations. In the end, Marcus learned that lesson the expensive way. I got to keep doing work I loved, and Phoenix Medical continued serving hospitals and clinics with the reliability they depended on. Sometimes the old way is the right way, especially when it's the way that actually works.